The morning light in my new house felt too clean, too bright, skimming over unpacked boxes and the single mug I'd left on the counter. The air still carried the quiet of a place no one had touched but me. Then the gravel outside shifted a slow, deliberate crunch. I checked the door camera. A woman stepped out with a suitcase. My sister. 13 years of silence rewritten in one entitled glance at the porch. She didn't knock. She didn't hesitate. She just walked toward my door like she already lived here. The next day, after I bought the house, she showed up. I grew up in a house where sound chose sides. Luna never had to ask for anything. The room bent toward her before she opened her mouth. If she sighed, plans shifted. If she frowned, my mother appeared behind her like a shadow, ready to cushion the fall. I learned early that the easiest way to keep peace was to stay small, move quietly, take responsibility, leave no trace for anyone to use against me. The first time I understood my place, I was 11. Luna misplaced a few dollars she'd been saving for a school fair. She stood in the kitchen, palms up, eyes shimmering, voice trembling like she had lost something precious. I tried to say I hadn't touched it, but Helena focused on me, not her. That look, not anger, not confusion, just a tired disappointment, cut deeper than any accusation. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. Luna cried, and that was enough. The pattern stuck. Years blurred into the same rhythm. Luna made a mistake. I absorbed it. She forgot her project. I stayed up fixing it. She missed the bus. I was blamed for taking too long in the bathroom. Even small moments twisted. If Luna was stressed, we whispered. If Luna was tired, I drove. If Luna was upset, I apologized for whatever she felt, even when I barely understood what had happened. By the time we were teenagers, Luna had learned exactly how her softness worked. She didn't abuse it loudly. She didn't have to. A single tear, a slight tremble, a perfectly timed breath. Helena read those signals like scripture, and the rest of the family followed. I kept my head down, did my chores, picked up extra shifts at a local diner, tried to prove I wasn't the problem they quietly believed I was. But guilt is a stubborn currency in a household built on imbalance. It collects interest. Eventually, it becomes the only version of you anyone recognizes. The real shift happened one summer afternoon. Luna posted something vague online about betrayal, about being hurt by the person she trusted most. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Relatives reposted it within hours. My phone filled with messages asking what I'd done, telling me to apologize, reminding me that family comes first. No one asked for context. No one asked if it was true. They just believed her, the way they always had. I realized then that the story had changed, and I was no longer a character in it. I was a cautionary example, a silhouette, a convenient villain they could aim their empathy away from. So I left, quietly. No confrontation, no explanation. I packed 2 bags, moved into a cramped room on the other side of Denver, and told myself distance would clear the air. But distance only sealed their version of me tighter. Weeks became months. Months folded into years. Invitations stopped. Messages dried out. My mother changed her number without telling me. 13 years passed like that, empty, silent, predetermined. 13 years of being gone without anyone noticing I'd left. It happened quietly the way erasure usually does. Not with a dramatic announcement, not with shouting, just a slow, familiar shift of attention away from me, as if I had stepped out of frame and no one bothered to adjust the camera. It was a family gathering I hadn't been invited to. I didn't even know it was happening until a coworker mentioned seeing photos online. Smiling faces, raised glasses, everyone dressed in the same pale colors they always picked for big moments. I scrolled through them in the back room of the kitchen, the stainless steel counters reflecting the white glow of my phone. They looked happy, whole, complete without me. In one picture, someone had written our girls under a shot of Helena and Luna. I wasn't one of the girls. I hadn't been for a long time, but seeing it spelled out so casually, so confidently, felt like being erased with good lighting and perfect composition. Then came the caption that stilled my breath, 13 years without drama. Here's to healing, healing, as if my absence was peace. As if I had caused the storm, they were celebrating surviving. I didn't react. I didn't throw my phone or cry or demand an explanation. I just stood there, surrounded by the hum of refrigerators and the soft beep of timers, the world as steady as my heartbeat wasn't. When the shift ended, I drove home through Denver's quiet streets, past the warehouses and late-night diners, the kind of places where no one asks questions. In the parking lot of my rented kitchen, I sat with the engine off, hands still dusted with flour, replaying their celebration frame by frame. No empty seat, no missing name, just a family that had rewritten itself without me. I didn't correct the story. I didn't ask to be added back in. I simply exhaled long and steady, like letting go of a weight that had already decided to leave me first. And in that small, sharp quiet, I understood something they hadn't forgotten me. They had replaced me. I just smiled. If this part resonates with you, linger a moment, breathe, reflect, and stay with the story as it unfolds next. The shift began the same way every night, lights humming above me, the faint smell of detergent rising from the floor, the metal tables cold against my palms. This kitchen wasn't glamorous. It wasn't even fully mine. I rented the late-night slot the hours no one wanted when the city outside fell silent, and the only sounds were mixers grinding and timers ticking. But in that stillness, something in me settled, something steadier than the life I'd left behind. I started small. A few trays, a few orders, people from office buildings who wanted something sweet to break long meetings, delivery drivers who slipped a tip into the box because they liked the way my labels were always perfectly aligned. I wrote everything down: the cost of flour, the hours I baked, the exact number of bars a sheet pan could hold. If a mistake happened, I didn't apologize for it. I documented it, quietly, methodically. The numbers didn't lie, and they didn't demand anything from me. Work grew in increments. One client told another. A manager from a local workplace placed a bulk order, then another. Soon the stainless steel counters filled with cooling racks and the air warmed from the constant heat of the ovens. I got used to the pattern, the night beginning in silence and ending with stacks of labeled boxes ready for delivery at dawn. I didn't think of it as a business at first, just survival. Something I could control when everything else had slipped away. But the money changed shape. The notebook with costs and bills grew thicker. The orders became consistent. For the first time, exhaustion didn't feel like punishment. It felt like progress. When a regional cafe chain reached out, I didn't believe the email at first. I read it 3 times under the neon lights, the hum of the refrigerator filling the space between each breath. They wanted weekly deliveries across multiple locations, steady work, a real contract, enough income to make the edges of my life feel less sharp. I didn't tell anyone. Not a friend, not a neighbor, certainly not my family. Silence had always been my burden. Now it became my strategy. The contract stabilized everything. I upgraded my equipment, bought sturdier pans, replaced my old mixer with one that didn't rattle like a loose engine. I hired a part-time helper, a college student who moved carefully, spoke softly, and didn't ask questions. With another pair of hands, the nights felt lighter. I could breathe between batches. I could think. And when I thought I realized something I had never allowed myself before I could leave the cramped room I lived in, I could buy not an apartment with thin walls or a sublet that smelled like someone else's life. A place with doors that only I had a key to. The mansion came later, almost by accident. I wasn't searching for something grand, just space, stability, a kitchen big enough for more than one tray at a time. But the listing caught my eye. Photos of sunlight pouring across hardwood floors, a long hallway, a quiet street in eastern Denver. Too big for one person, too empty, too calm. Exactly what I needed. When I walked through it, the first time, the sound of my own footsteps echoed like I was exploring a museum after closing hours. I stood in the middle of the living room and felt a strange pull, not awe, not pride, just a quiet recognition that I had earned a life where no one else dictated the temperature of the air. I bought it, signed the papers, walked inside with only a folding chair and a box of test recipes. The room swallowed the silence, but for once, it didn't feel like loss. It felt like room to breathe. And with that breath came clarity. Space wasn't enough. I needed boundaries. So I built them the same way I had built the business, quietly, methodically, without performance. I created a folder, a simple one, thin and clean, the color of blank paper. Inside, I placed documents, guest rules, a no trespass notice, records of past payments I'd covered over the years, printed copies of every message or accusation that had rewritten me into someone I wasn't. Each page was a reminder that feelings had once decided the truth. This time, the truth would have structure. I wrote a new rule, too, communication only by email. No sudden visits, no emotional appeals, no shifting stories. If someone wanted something from me, their words would have to exist where they could be read twice, where they couldn't be twisted by tears or raised voices. It wasn't revenge, it was preparation. As I placed the folder on the console table near the front door, the house seemed to exhale with me. The decision felt clean, firm, a boundary drawn not in anger but in order. For 13 years, they had defined me by absence. Now for the first time, I would define myself by design. And quietly, without announcement, without seeking approval, I built a life that didn't leave space for anyone to crumble it again. I heard the car before I saw it, tires rolling slowly over the gravel. I hadn't even finished leveling. The morning was pale and cold, the kind of light that made every surface in the entryway look sharper than it was. I wiped my hands on a towel, expecting a delivery, but the camera screen lit up with a face I hadn't seen in over a decade. Luna stepped out first, her posture loose, confident, like she was arriving at a place held open for her. Behind her, Helena wrestled with a suitcase, the wheels thudding unevenly against the walkway. Neither of them looked around as if the house had always belonged to them, and I was the one who might be intruding. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there listening to the faint hum of the heater, the steady rhythm of my own breath. This house had only known my footsteps, my work, my silence. Letting them into that space felt like opening the past and letting it spill across the floor. I cracked the door just an inch, just enough to see, but not enough to be stepped through. Their expressions flickered surprise, folding into expectation. "Hey," Luna said, adjusting her grip on the suitcase handle. "I'm moving in since—" She didn't finish. I didn't say anything. I simply shifted my body, blocking the doorway, keeping the gap narrow. My hand rested lightly on the edge of the door, not tense, not shaking, steady. Helena stepped forward, her voice carrying that same tired authority she'd used my entire childhood. "Valentina, don't start. Your sister needs support. We came all this way. Support." A word she'd never used when it was me gasping under everyone's expectations. I let her speak. Then I reached behind me and lifted the thin folder from the console table. I held it where they could see it clean, organized, unmistakable. Guest rules. The no trespass notice. Boundaries written in ink, not shaped by emotion. Luna blinked at it, confusion hardening into something close to disbelief. "You're kidding." I opened the door 2 more inches, not to welcome them, but to set the folder on the small table beside me. The movement was slow, deliberate, free of the urgency that used to define every interaction with them. "This isn't necessary," Helena said quickly, her voice tightening. "Family doesn't need paperwork. You should have called." Paperwork. As if the years hadn't been documented in wounds they never acknowledged. I kept my voice even. "All communication is by email now." Luna let out a short, incredulous laugh. "You're being dramatic." It was the same tone she used to use when she cried on cue, when tears became strategy and sympathy came easily. But the house behind me didn't bend toward her. Nothing in its quiet shifted to accommodate. Their confidence faltered. Just a little. Enough to see the truth settle. "You're really not letting us in?" Helena asked. I didn't answer. I didn't defend. I didn't list the 13 years of absence or the weight of being rewritten as a villain in their stories. I simply stepped back, placed my hand on the door, and let the silence speak for me. The door clicked shut, soft, final. Outside, the gravel stirred as they shifted, uncertain of what to do without the old version of me to lean on. Inside, the house held its shape, and so did I. In the days that followed, the house stayed remarkably quiet. Not the hollow quiet of an empty place, but a settled one, the kind that feels earned. I moved through the rooms the same way I always had. Measured steps, steady breath. but something in the air felt different, as if the walls finally understood which life they were meant to hold. I kept working. That part of my life never changed. The industrial kitchen still buzzed with the same neon hum, the mixers still fought through thick batter, the oven still flushed the room with heat that fogged the windows. But the tension I used to carry into those nights didn't come with me anymore. For the first time, work wasn't an escape. It was simply mine. 3 weeks passed before I heard from Helena again. Not a doorstep visit, not a performance, just an email. She asked to see the house once, alone. One afternoon, no assumptions, no suitcase. I agreed, mostly out of practical curiosity. What someone chooses to do under clear rules says more than any history between you. She arrived exactly on time. No guilt in her eyes, no attempt at authority. She walked the hallway slowly, fingertips grazing the wall as if the texture might tell her something about who I'd become. In the kitchen, she paused at the long counter, noticing the way trays were stacked, the way labels were aligned, the lack of clutter that had once defined our old home. We sat for a moment at the table. She didn't mention the past. I didn't ask for explanations. The silence between us wasn't heavy. It was simply honest, two people occupying a space that no longer required one of them to disappear to keep peace. When she left, she lingered at the doorway, hand brushing the frame, not claiming it, not blessing it, just acknowledging it, a quiet acceptance that whatever power she once held here had expired. Luna's updates came secondhand. A mutual acquaintance mentioned she'd taken a job, then another, then earned a small promotion. Her posts online shifted from vague blame to ordinary exhaustion. For once, her story didn't orbit around me. Life didn't transform overnight. It simply stabilized. My home filled slowly with laughter from neighbors, soft conversations with employees after long shifts, the gentle clatter of plates during end-of-week potlucks. Nothing dramatic, just a life formed from intention instead of survival. The folder stayed on the entryway table, untouched. Not a threat, just a reminder, a shape of the boundary that now held. In the end, it wasn't revenge that changed anything. It was clarity. The kind that arrives only when silence is chosen, not forced. I learned that blood isn't a permission slip, and love without boundaries is just another form of erasure. My life didn't expand when they returned. It expanded when I stopped shrinking to fit theirs. And if any part of this story echoes in you, stay with the channel. There are more truths to uncover quietly, one boundary at a time.